Robarge. That's the correct way of pronouncing your last name, correct?
Yeah, it depends on which relative you talk to. It's either Robarge or Robarge. I usually go by Robarge.
Robarge. Okay. So she, I mean, we talk about powerful, and I just find it really powerful because some of the things that she's done, I don't even know what they are. One of them is like she was born and raised in Wisconsin, and she received her Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from Marquette University. And then
Marquette.
Marquette. Okay, Marquette University. And then she attended the Master's in Electrical Engineering at USC, which is my alma mater as well. And then she moved to Rider University in New Jersey, where she completed an MBA in Marketing and Economics. And so all while working full-time in the aerospace industry, where she specialized in satellite guidance systems. Now, how many of you know what satellite guidance systems are? She was already offered a full paid marketing PhD fellowship from Temple University, which she declined. While she was in New Jersey, she was elected into public office as a county committee woman for the town of South Brunswick, near Princeton. After completing her MBA, Eileen transformed into engineering product management and then became the director of marketing for several high-tech semiconductor companies and a long local startup. She worked on a team that established several patents in audio and video technology for PC systems, set-top boxes, and game consoles. She was also a lead engineer and director of marketing and the only female working on several products. Through the startup in San Diego, she was the first engineer to introduce fiber optic technology for fiber optic technology. She's had the wheels of real estate spinning since she graduating with her MBA, but then rather than purchase her first home with the $60,000 she had saved, she bought land, hired a general contractor, and started building. And she's going to take it away as far as all the different buildings that she has and all the different projects that she has. But to me, that's absolutely amazing. So thank you for sharing your time with us this evening. How are you doing?
So basically what Desiree went through was all of my early career while I was doing the real estate stuff sort of as a side business. I made a transition away from high tech in about 2010 when it just was the right timing to do so. The startup I was working for was just not going the direction I thought it should. I was asked to, not be honest with longtime customers that I had. And it was the time to part ways and actually go for the real estate full time. And that's turned out to be probably one of the best decisions I've made in my lifetime.
So for backing up a little bit, when
Sure.
you were that pretty little girl, what were you thinking that you wanted to be when you grew up then? Was it always an engineer?
I always had a lot of math gravitation. And to give you a little background too, my dad is a civil engineer. So there was already engineering in the family line, right? So the brain, I guess, thinking, mathematically was already part of the family environment, if you will. So I think that was part of it. But every time I tried to do something creative, you take an art class and people are drawing flowers and making all these beautiful creative things, and I'm drawing squares and circles, and everybody's looking at my stuff and go, this is horrible. So I knew creativity was not on my side. And then by going to engineering school, I put the last, knife in the coffin on that one because my creative brain just isn't there. So you don't want to hire me as somebody to do artwork. I'll tell you that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because sometimes people don't. Sometimes there's always this question about whether you were born a certain way or you became a certain way, whether entrepreneurs are born or whether they're, they create it. And
I don't have an opinion. I think they're both. I think some are creative, some have just, the gifts that they've been given naturally, but others create their own gifts and make good with those too. So I think it could go both ways.
So you enjoyed education. Was that part of your family habits as well, as far as getting so much education, or is that your desire?
My dad did get a civil engineering degree, but he didn't do it the easy way. He went into the military, got the GI Bill, and that gave him the ability to actually afford to go to college. So when it was my turn to go to college, I had to do basically the same thing, but I didn't go into the military. You don't want me for that either. Um, you don't. But what I ended up being able to do was get a scholarship, which partially paid for some of the education. I was very lucky to get that benefit. But I lost it halfway through because I didn't keep my grades up. And so I went into work. I had to work. I worked at a pizza joint. I, worked at a retail store, and I was also tutoring. So, I mean, I was trying to make it work so that I could finish my degree. But I think something that probably has been very tangible for me in terms of being successful is having an amazing work ethic. When you get yourself into a situation, you don't have money for something you want to do, well, you figure out, okay, what am I going to do to work to get the money I want to do what I want to do? And that's just something I think that was instilled, with my family.
And so was it ambition? Was your desire just to be able to make that particular thing happen? Or did you always want to be majorly successful and, famous or accomplished? What was your drive? What was your motivation behind that discipline?
Good question. So going into Marquette University, I actually started out as pre-med because I thought that's really hard. I want to do that. It's hard. After about a semester of biology classes and chemistry, I'm like, I really hate this. This is awful. And so I very quickly switched actually into biomedical engineering, thinking that, that is sort of a tangential career that made sense. What I've learned about biomedical engineering is it's really, really a narrow field. And electrical actually offered you the opportunity to work in the biomedical field, but also in many others. So over the course of 3 semesters, I switched my major 3 times and ended up with the electrical engineering, which proved to be the perfect choice for me because it just fits. I've got the analytical brain for it.
So when you said that you chose something because it's hard, so where did that come from? Is it you always challenging yourself? Was that from your siblings or just your personal drive that wanted you to choose something that was really hard? Because some people would just choose like that's too hard and go another direction.
Yeah, no, I've always picked things in life that are hard. There's no question about it. I went through a phase where I wanted to learn a new sport every year. So I didn't pick ping pong. Oh no, that was not it. I said, all right, I'm an adult. I'm 30 something, and I'm gonna learn to snowboard for the first time. So I've always gone for things that are hard. If it's easy, I just don't have interest.
That's interesting. That's interesting. That's something to ponder over because that's very, very interesting. So, so you went through that and you weren't concerned about being, I'm sure even in those days, there wasn't many men in the classes and their studies and so forth. You're still predominantly the only woman or probably one of few.
Yes, there weren't a whole lot of women, especially in electrical engineering. It had the least amount of engineers. Civil and biomedical tend to have more women gravitate towards those careers for whatever reason. But one thing that I say, because there was a group of us ladies that got together and we actually founded the first engineering sorority in the country at Marquette University. And I think there was maybe a dozen of us. And since then, we've had some more chapters expand, and it is, engineering. It's an engineering sorority. So that's kind of neat to empower the women and get, have resources available for the women to lean on each other and be supportive of each other. So yeah, that's still, that's quite a few years ago that started. I'm not sure how many chapters we have now, but I think maybe it's up to a dozen.
Wow, fantastic.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't follow it so much anymore. And when they do the reunions, I'm typically not around. So I get the newsletters and that kind of thing.
That's fantastic. So, okay, so you did the engineering and you started with these different companies. You made a transition because you weren't in line with what their beliefs were. So what happened next?
Well, like I said, I had always been in real estate since I got out of MBA school. Like, I took the money instead of buying a house, which I could have reasonably done at that time, and bought a piece of land, built 5 units on it, kept that for, let me think, I guess it was about 5 years, got a little bit of equity, paid down the loan a little bit. And then I sold that and did a 1031 exchange. I'm not sure if people are familiar with what that is. If you're in real estate, you probably are. If you're not, then you may not be. Did a 1031 exchange into a 32 unit property that had just been completed. Then from there, held on to that for about 2 years, built up a little more capital. Again, I'm still living in a dump, and used that money to buy 23 more units. And the story continues from there. And right now, after all that effort, I guess you might say, I'm sitting at 184 units that are built. And I've got a 98 unit apartment development that I'm working on right now in Sheboygan. And that's why I'm here in Wisconsin. We've got the first 2 buildings in operation, first one in July, second one in September, and the third one will be operational in about 2 weeks. So it's a lot of work, but it's really exciting, and it's obviously very well received in the community because they've asked me to build more.
And so Wisconsin, you chose Wisconsin. Are most of your properties there?
Yes, at this time, everything I own and operate is in Wisconsin. So I have properties in Kenosha, Racine, Milwaukee, and Sheboygan. And if you're familiar with the Midwest, you probably know a little bit about where those are, but let me give you a reference point. Chicago is about an hour south of Milwaukee, and Sheboygan is about an hour north of Milwaukee. And then Racine and Kenosha are between Chicago and Milwaukee.
And so when you started building, you had your first building, and you did your first land. I mean, that's still a project you were doing it. You're still working full time. So you found the land, and so you just decided to build, or did someone say, hey, why don't you build here? There was a need. I mean, what prompted you to even make that decision?
Well, here's the motivation. Okay, so my father was able to retire at age 55. I decided the only way I'm going to beat him is by doing real estate on the side. And unfortunately, I still like the real estate, so I don't think I'm going to be done anytime soon. It's something I really do enjoy. It's really very rewarding to provide a really nice quality home for people. I mean, this is one of their most important decisions. Granted, they're residential rentals and they can certainly move after a year's time or several years time, but it's their home, and that's a big thing to provide, and I really enjoy it. And the people that we work with, our tenants, tend to be pretty good quality tenants, just because we do a lot of good screening, and that makes it a win-win, I think, for everybody.
And you've implemented your own management company as well. Has that already been from the start, or you just started doing that?
No, I had property management company. When I had the 5 units, I did that myself. But once I got past that, it really didn't feel comfortable for me to be managing that many units, managing the repairs, doing all the leasing, etc. So I had property management companies do that for me, which gave me the opportunity to learn that 9 out of 10 property management companies stink. They send you a bill, and they don't put they have no skin in the game, right? They're going to get a check regardless if they do a good job or a bad job. And there's no skin in the game. The employees have no skin in the game. If a tenant goes, without hot water for a week, they don't care. That's in my mind is completely unacceptable. So by starting my own property management company, I was able to up the level of service very easily because the level of service was not good. And I had used quite a few different property management companies prior to that. So the service level is tremendous. And being a small business and you can't have any weak links. I think all you ladies have people that either you work with or work for you, and there can't be any weak links in the chain. If you have a weak link, they got to go.
And so has that, when you say that there have been other property managers have been terrible, so you started your own, you just started building your own team, you hired this person, your management, your maintenance, all of the different components to that?
Yes, and I mean, we outsource a lot of the maintenance labor, but in terms of staffing for leasing, administrative work, for minor maintenance, turns, between tenants, we call those turns. Those kinds of things really need to be in-house. You really can't use third parties. But if you need a new heating system, obviously you're going to bring somebody else in that has that expertise.
So that's a little bit your story. So now the challenges.
Uh-oh. You didn't tell me about that part.
The challenges. I mean, the challenges from when you started, the challenges along the way. Some of the moments that you thought, okay, maybe this doesn't feel so good, or have you ever thought about quitting or stopping or doing something different?
No, I've never thought about quitting, but I do have, when you think you've heard it all with residential rentals, when you think you've had every possible situation you could come up with, you haven't. There's always something new. So I'm not sure if I should tell this story, but I'm going to tell it anyways.
Yeah, tell it anyway.
So we do a very good job of screening. Our properties would be considered B+, A-, so they're not the top of the line, but they're definitely not, anything that would be subsidized. So it's, people that have the average income or a little better than the average income for the community that the properties are. So, stable, solid, people with long-term jobs, that kind of thing. So we did have a tenant family move into one of our apartments here in Sheboygan. And what we do, to make sure everything is in good order is we do spring inspections and fall inspections where we go into each unit. And, we take a look to see if there's a leaky faucet, or if they didn't report, their toilet is running, or if there's any other sanitary concerns, because that can come up too if people are sloppy. Because you don't, if somebody leaves a bunch of food out all the time, you're going to end up with pests that you don't really want. And those pests will go into the other units because, it's an apartment complex. So that could cause you problems. Well, we went into one of the units after the tenant had been there for 6 months, and we couldn't figure out why there's feathers everywhere. Feathers, they're everywhere. Well, we found out why there are feathers everywhere. They were using the garage as a chicken farm.
Oh my God, chicken farm.
Chicken farm. And it wasn't because they were hatching the eggs. They were butchering the chickens and they were selling the chickens to, I don't know who. But literally they were using it as a chicken farm. So obviously that tenant had to go, and the expense to clean all the feathers out of the whole HVAC system everywhere, new carpet, new vinyl, new appliances, you had to actually tear down and kills the walls in the garage from that situation. So when you think you've screened well, you can screen for credit, you can screen for employment, you can screen for good landlord references, you can screen for all these things, but you can't screen for chicken farms.
Wow, that is a surprise. I would have never even thought about that. And it's a good thing you do that. Can you imagine if it went on and on and on?
Well, right. I mean, yes, it could have been, at some point you would have thought the neighbors would have noticed chicken noises coming from next door, but the insulation is actually pretty good between the units, so maybe not. Yeah. So when you think you've heard it all, you haven't. And I know you didn't hear that story before.
No, that is the first. So when you talk about other challenges, like challenges as far as getting the funds to build something, or getting the loan from a bank, or getting, and I know you mentioned you didn't have many investors in your projects. Most of them you did yourself, financing.
All of them, 100%. My one-man band, one-woman band, whatever you want to call it.
So sometimes that may be challenging. Maybe the funds were supposed to be someplace and didn't come through on time, or maybe it's supposed to be finished, the project was supposed to be finished at a certain time and it wasn't, as a result of, maybe even no fault of your own. What are some of the other, there's challenges and that you may have encountered, or even just being a woman in a situation where the men were cooperative, or your team, being the leader of your own team, your own construction team. What would you find? So well, you like hard, so
yeah. So I've been asked, I think, a similar question before. I recently did a talk with the Sheboygan Chamber. They have a program for sort of young professionals. They bring in 16 students, quote unquote, and they learn about all kinds of different things in the community. So I was one of their speakers as a developer, community developer in terms of real estate. And they were asking me, two questions that they asked me that stood out. One, what would be one of the biggest bits of advice you could provide to other women? And my answer to that is to have another female mentor, especially if you're in a male-dominated field. You need another female mentor, somebody that's succeeded even better than you have, and have that person as somebody you can ask questions or just talk to when you're frustrated with a situation, don't know what to do, etc. That's the biggest thing. And that has largely been absent in most of my career because engineering didn't have it, and construction certainly doesn't. I only know of one other female developer in the state of Wisconsin, and she's focused on the low income housing, completely different market than what I'm focused on. So that was one thing. And then I guess back to your point, Desiree, can you kind of go through that again real quick?
Sure, just the challenges, so there's challenges along when you're either trying to get financing or trying to get permits or trying to get a crew or trying to get, something opened on time. The challenges, and the reason why we talk about that is you make it sound so easy, and it's easier for you, obviously, because you've been doing it for such a long time, and you just have that, mind and the talent to be able to do that. For someone that's maybe thinking about doing that, they're going to think about all these reasons why I can't do it. I can't do it because I can't self-fund myself, or I don't. If they had $60,000, they can't even imagine how they can get started that way. Or challenges with their families. How has it affected your life personally? Were you married or children? They can't do it because they have time away. So there's so many different quote unquote challenges that sometimes women encounter, either in their heads or in their true life of them trying to accomplish certain goals. And they hear that other people have encountered them. One, it makes them feel better, not I guess just them, but it also lets them, give them hope and give them the belief and the faith that yes, if she was able to do it and make it through that, then they would be able to do the same.
Absolutely. Yes.
So sometimes the challenge, you're going back and forth from Wisconsin to California. So finally you brought a home here, and you built your home here. So was there challenges again in any part of what you're doing in your life? I mean, is there any of those moments where you just still like, no? I mean, I have moments where I'm going to wring somebody's neck, or you have a tenant. Some of the ladies I know on the line,
yeah,
either a tenant or a neighbor or someone that's creating a challenge. This is something that's, that encounter for people to know that yes, okay, it happens.
Yes, no, I mean, I'm trying to think if I can come up with a decent example, but yes, there's always frustrations with everything. But I think one of the benefits by kind of being a commuter to the properties and to at least some of my employees that are here is I'm able to take a step back at the end of the day, even though the end of the day might be 10:30, 11, 12 at night. I can take a step back at the end of the day and I'm away from it. Physically away from it. So when I'm here, I'm not away from it. And I look out the window and I'm not away from it. So I think being able to take that step back, have some isolated space that gives you that ability to calm down and focus on anything else, whether it be a good book or watching TV, cooking a meal, go bowling, whatever, something that keeps you away from it. I think that's a tremendous benefit. But and I'm just trying to think of situation like something that just put me over the top. And right now I'm not coming up with anything. So come back to me on that one.
Okay. All right. But one of the things you pointed out though, is that having been able to get away from it. And that probably is really helpful for you to being able to handle the challenges. Maybe it's not really a challenge, maybe it's just a situation that you're able to handle because you're involved in bike riding, you're involved in golf. Tell us what some of the other things that you, as far as the sports, things that type of ways that you release or get away from your work.
Yeah, no, that's actually the biggest two sports right now are definitely the cycling. I've done a lot of 100-mile bike rides. I was geared up to do one here in about 2 weeks, but I'm here instead. I've got to cancel. So there's another one I'm going to do probably in, I think it's the second weekend of February. So it's 100 miles in one day on a bike.
Oof.
Not no electric power, no batteries, and that's one of my things. And it is just tremendous to do something like that. The natural body high that you have from doing something like that will last a week. And it just completely changes your perspective on everything, going through and doing something like that, that's that physically active. The golf, well, yes, I like my challenge, and I like to play in competitions a little bit too.
Competitive over here, it's competitive. So is there any sports that you took, that you did, and you tried, you're doing it every year, that you didn't like and that you wasn't well at? Is there anything that you say, okay, I'm not well at that?
Let's see, surfing. I did not do well at that. So I mentioned earlier that I went on a mission to learn a new sport a year, and I did do that. So I wasn't allowed to play softball in high school. I learned how to play softball, at age 40. Put together my own team, a co-ed team, and we ran for about 5, 6, 7 years, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I picked something and I just go for it. Windsurfing was another one I picked up, which was quite hard, but very rewarding. But surfing, nope, can't do it.
Well, I think, and then this shows again the fact that I'm hearing so many different nuggets about, picking something and going for it, or, not being afraid to pick something that's hard, or not being afraid of, the competition, but also having the balance and getting away. So ladies, again, I really make sure that you have any questions, please include it in the chat. So when we finish, we'll be able to open it up. So those are some of your challenges. What about your victories? So when you did your first building, you built your first building, what did that feel like? Because you were young then, yes?
Oh yeah, no, I was just out of MBA school, so I was just out of graduate school. Second graduate school. So I was in my late 20s, I think, at that point.
And so what did it feel like? Was it?
Well, that one was, I mean, it really just seemed like everything worked. I mean, and granted, it's been a lot of time since I did that, but I don't remember any substantial problems. I got the land, I bought, interviewed GCs, I went to the bank, and everything worked. And why? I don't know, just the numbers worked. If you present the numbers and the numbers are attractive enough to the bank, you're going to get the loan. And that's always been key. And so that's part of the engineering probably in me is, always focusing on the numbers. If you've got numbers to back yourself up, and it gives you confidence too, right? If you diligence these numbers and okay, I'm going to be able to make this kind of cash flow. Here's worst case, here's best case. Okay, I'm still going to be okay, even if it's worst case. And, you bring to the bank the best case for the funding, but knowing full well that, you're very confident in what your worst case would be. And I think that's key, the numbers.
That's a good lesson. So victory. So were you excited when you first done, or was it like, oh, okay? When you saw that, when you had your ribbon cutting, or or even when the groundbreaking, at what point did you say this is a victory, or did you celebrate? Do you celebrate?
Yeah. So I was like referring back to the 5 units, going back in time there. And so I don't remember any big problems there. With this property that I'm developing now, there's been tons of problems, right? So I was about to sign a loan documents and then COVID hit. Okay, now what? The bank wants to take a pause of 2 months. Well, I don't want to take a pause. So I had to go find other financing, and I did. About to sign with a different lender, and the first bank came back and said, well, wait a minute, we changed our mind. We definitely want to do this project. So ended up with the first bank after all that time. Because I mean, it took me, a month to go through the process of getting approval for another bank. So I did lose some time. But what I also did at the same time is I started construction. I started knowing that I'm going to get this, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to be able to get funding somewhere. I'm going to figure it out. And started moving forward with the project prior to actually having a signed loan. So now that's guts. I think about that and I'm like, boy, I must have had a little too much confidence. That's pretty scary stuff. What if I got to pay people, I don't know. How am I going to write the checks without the lender? So that was a challenge. But then the minute you started the construction project, you hear in the news every day how much lumber has gone up, and that's your biggest cost when it comes to construction, period. Bar none, it is huge. And the budget I had for the lumber was it ended up being double. By the time I get out the door with this thing, it's going to be at least double what we had figured on. And I'm going to actually need to get some additional funding from the lender to finish the project up because of the construction costs being so, I guess nobody could have predicted that happening, right? At the beginning of COVID, rather than take a pause, though, I knew it was smart to actually just keep pushing. I knew the community needed the housing, and with the housing that I'm providing, it's private entry. Well, that's actually better than an apartment complex. If you don't want to be near people and walk down the hallway with other people, you want your own entrance. So that was a benefit too to the community at that time, and still is. People still value that privacy.
Amazing. So how do you celebrate?
Hmm.
When you celebrate, and what do you celebrate? Do you celebrate every time a building is completed? Do you celebrate holidays? Do you celebrate birthdays? What do you celebrate, and how do you do that?
Okay, well, with this project, we did a groundbreaking. So there was some photos, videos. We had the town board came out, Chamber of Commerce came out, invited the family that I bought the land from, because it used to be a farm field. So we just had a little groundbreaking party. And then when it came time to open that first building, we did a full-on ribbon cutting. So I work with the Economic Development Corporation here a little bit too on some of the, getting information to the public in terms of the project itself, its status, and so on. But mostly the chamber has actually been a huge benefit. And one of the things that I did with this project, which other developers do not do, when you bring in a GC, your GC brings in all their vendors, right? Their plumber, their excavator, their, cement guy. I mean, it's all their guys. They bring the train and they bring them all down. Well, with this particular GC, I negotiated that I wanted to benefit the Sheboygan community. It's in the middle of COVID that we're going to be building this. There's going to be a lot of unemployment, a lot of people that will, be very grateful to have some work. So let's do a Sheboygan first theme. And so I partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to do that. And we brought in 12 different vendors in the community that actually worked on the project. And other than one dog, we got 11 good ones. It worked out extraordinarily well. Plus just the knowledge within the community that as a developer, I did something different. I actually benefited the community rather than employing people from Milwaukee and Green Bay, which would have been the case otherwise.
That is huge. That's a great benefit. I know they appreciate that. I'm sure they're supporting you as a result of it. You probably got a lot of support.
It is. It's huge. And like I said, they've already, when I, basically at the groundbreaking, they're already kind of nudging me in the elbow. Hey, by the way, we've got another project we'd like you to do. I'm like, wait, let me get this one done first. And then we'll see.
So how does Eileen celebrate? How do you enjoy the fruits of your labor? What do you do?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, since we were just talking about, is those 100-mile bike rides. That's actually a celebration. And then you can go and have a big old dinner with wine and dessert and everything, and you have no guilt. Absolutely no guilt, because you burnt 10,000 calories. So that's one way I celebrate. Work hard, play hard. I'm sure a lot of people live by that motto. Going on a nice trip. So I like to go to Ireland, play golf, go sightseeing, enjoy the people there. Went there in August, in fact, to do just that. So yeah, work hard, play hard.
And travel.
Yeah.
Travel. And so tell us something that we would never guess about you.
Well, let's see. It's probably been about 10 years, but I used to have blue hair.
How long? How long do you have blue hair for?
Probably a good year. I mean, it wasn't all blue. I had streaks of blue and it was pretty and my eyes are sort of blue, so it worked out.
And what made you do it and what made you stop doing it?
At the time, I was still working in high-tech semiconductors and I really didn't like my boss at the time. And I just, you know, I don't know. That was just a little rebellious stage I went through.
And then one day you figured out that was enough and that was it.
Well, it just the blue never stayed in. It was so much maintenance.
That's good that it didn't stay forever. It's just so much maintenance. That's funny. That's cute. Okay, so we go through your story, your challenges, your victories. Now, what are your secrets to success? You've dropped a few of them along the way, but what really would you say is a secret to your success?
Just the constant drive to get to whatever that next goal is. And I've been doing this for 20 years. So at the beginning of the year, I know everybody does their New Year's resolutions and you know, 5 days later, most people forget them. You ladies, I'm sure, don't do that. You make it a lot further along than most, but I'll set anywhere from 10 to 20 goals for the year. And I will write them down. And I've been doing this since like 1999. And then at the end of the year, I check them to see how I've done. And I try to, and some of these things are ridiculous that I put on the list. Like, one year I said, I'm going to do a double century. That's 200 miles in a day. Didn't happen. That's just a little out of reach. So that's one of the things I do. So I monitor that, and it's something that, that's measurable. You can check those goals and they're measurable. So you know how you did at the end of the year.
And so who are you trying to prove anything to anybody else or just to yourself? Are you competing with anybody? You feel you're accountable to anybody? Like, even that process.
I mean, the drive I have isn't just to, it's not just about, retiring early and having enough money to do so. It's just to pick things that are hard, that you're not expected to necessarily be successful at, and just being successful at them. I've been just really blessed with a lot of wonderful gifts, and, education to back it up. And, it's because it's hard. You go for it because it's hard.
There's your logo. There's your quote, rather.
It is pretty good. I mean, yeah,
go for it because it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, another one that it comes to mind is, if you're going to be sitting there thinking about things, well, think big, do something big. Don't do something small. And
then be prepared to take on whatever challenges comes along that way. You do something big, sometimes you get beat up a little bit, or you get exhausted, or just things come up. So just don't even anticipate those. Don't even factor those in. Just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the minute you get emotional about a situation when it comes to business development, then you're gonna lose it. You have to take a step back and be not emotional about the situation. So if it's somebody that just annoys the heck out of you, to somebody that didn't treat you right, or somebody that did a terrible job, you just got to take the emotion out of it, take a step back from that, and look at it from a business perspective and say, okay, what's the best business decision I can make based on this situation? So you can't control what life hands you, but you can control how you deal with it or how you handle it.
And you just take that emotion away. Is that easy for you to do?
Yes, it largely is. I mean, sometimes, a situation can be very difficult. And so you have to not make a decision about that situation then. You have to give it time, set it aside for a while, work on something else, go have family time, whatever is a good transition for you away from that thing. And maybe you let it, sit a couple days even, or, even just a couple of hours. It depends on what the circumstances are, but set it aside. And when you're of the state of mind that you're no longer emotional about it, then you're in a position to make a good business decision about it.
Wow, lots of great information, So what empowering thought would you like to leave our ladies with this evening?
That's a big question.
You've left so many
Well,
already.
it started out a little bit, I think, with the question about, when you feel powerless, don't feel powerless. And that's easy to say, right? But I think if you want, from a business perspective, you're looking to try to do something or achieve it, focus on the numbers. Sit down, do the numbers, do the diligence that you need to do on that. Put together a market plan, or for whatever the project is or the product is, and that will give you the confidence you need to have the power to execute.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I hope, I hope I'm of some help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
we got a pretty high powered group here you brought in tonight. So I think a lot of this stuff these ladies already know.
But hearing it again is never hurts, hearing it again, and hearing from somebody that's actually doing it and doing it very well, it really makes a difference. You kind of respark some of our batteries always need to be recharged. And
You're right.
wonderful hearing.